Good evening and welcome to this full council meeting of Burnley Borough Council. Members of the council present, His Worshipful the Mayor, Lord Wadji Khan of Burnley, Councillor Cosima Townley, Deputy Mayor, members of the council who are not in attendance are Councillors Marcus Johnston and Peter McCann. Officers present, Mick Cartledge, Chief Executive, Lukman Patel, Chief Operating Officer, Catherine Wardby, Head of Legal and Democratic Services, Chris Gay, Governance Manager, Imelda Grady, Alison McEwen and Eric Dickinson, Democracy Officers, Howard Hamilton Smith, Head of Finance and Property, and Mark Hindman, Graphic Designer. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alison. Welcome to the members of the public watching this on YouTube, and welcome to all council members. Firstly, there's an additional item at the start of this meeting. It's my statement. As a mayor and on behalf of the borough, I would like to recognise the service given by His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, to the country, and the services given to so many people over thousands and thousands of appointments. Will members please join me in a minute silence to remember His Royal Highness Prince Philip. Thank you. As people across the United Kingdom and millions across the world, we continue to mourn the loss of Prince Philip, His Royal Highness. I had the great privilege and honour of meeting this extraordinary man, and I was quite absolutely took back by his dedication and commitment and service to this country, and supporting the Her Royal Highness Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth for a number of years. So I know some colleagues might want to come in, so I'm just looking at any members here. We have Madam Deputy Mayor. We have you. The floor is yours, Councillor Townley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's not much that can be added to the tributes which have been given the world over to His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. However, I'd like to just add some concisively. Dutiful, loyal, dedicated, decisive, imaginative. He leaves a legacy few will rival, though many will envy. As of having taken part in the Duke of Edinburgh's award myself, I know exactly what that gave to me in terms of making my spirit grow. And I have met many of those who are taking part this year who have been actually travelling around our own borough. I wish them all luck. I hope it's a shame they won't get to meet their patron. But for us, I have to say that he gave so much and without ever complaining. Thank you.
Here, Councillor Townley. Is there any other member that wants to come in?
Councillor Townsend.
Councillor Townsend, yes, I've just seen your hand. Yeah, Councillor Townsend, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to offer my condolences to the Queen and the royal family in the loss that they've incurred. And obviously, I didn't meet the Duke of Edinburgh, so I don't have any personal anecdotes that I can provide. but there's absolutely no doubt in the dedication and service that he gave to this country over many decades. A fantastic contribution to our way of life. What I can recall is the excitement that was generated on his last royal visit to Burnley in 2012. The massive crowds that came out demonstrating not just the popularity of the Queen, but also the Queen's consort and the royal family generally. And I think we all recall we were left with such an iconic image of the Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the Prince of Wales, all at the head of a barge making passage through the Weaver's Triangle. An iconic image that has sold Burnley extremely well over the last decade, and I'm sure will sell Burnley extremely well for decades to come. Really happy memories for all the people of Burnley. And once again, I just offer my condolences to the Queen and the royal family. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Townsend. Can I ask Councillor Birtwistle to come in, please? You're mute, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to sort that out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I had the honour of meeting Prince Philip on a number of occasions. One when what has just been referred to by Mark, a very enjoyable day there when he came and did all the work with the Queen and Prince Charles, which I was told was a very unusual event to have all the main royals out at the same time on the barge on our canal. I also met him a number of times when I was the Member of Parliament, and I have to say he has a sense of humour that confused me completely. He would say things completely off the cuff that you think, what has he said that for? That when you thought about it later, it really was appropriate for the time we were all there. And it's a very sad day. It's a very sad day for what's happened, but I feel desperately sorry for the Queen to have a husband for 73 years and then suddenly be alone. And I know she's got a family around her, and I've got all the staff at Buckingham Palace around her, but she will still be alone, and it's a desperate time. And Kathleen and I send our deepest sympathies to the Queen for this very, very sad occasion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Much appreciated, Councillor Birtwistle. Can I finally bring in Councillor Fewings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As people have mentioned, the Queen and Prince Philip were married for more than 70 years, and this is undoubtedly a time of great sadness for her and her family. So on behalf of the Green Group, just want to say our thoughts are with the Queen and her family, and also to recognise, like others have mentioned, the notable contribution in connecting young people with nature and the outdoors, which I think will, be remembered for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. And I think we've got final speaker, Councillor Hosker, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I never had the honour of meeting the Duke, but again, I send my condolences to the Queen and loyal members of the royal family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hosker, and thank you for colleagues for your heartfelt tributes. We've got Councillor McCann has joined the meeting as well. Thank you very much for that. Let's move on to the next item, which is item 1 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting of the council. Just before I move those minutes, I just want to say a few words. Last meeting, myself and my colleague, Councillor Hosker, had a disagreement, and fortunately left him to leave the meeting, just to say to colleagues that we've had a kind of a good conversation after that and cleared our misunderstandings. And myself and Councillor Hosker go back in the days when we both were taxi drivers, good commonalities. Just want to make sure that we have ironed out our differences and all is well, because I always like to see people finish the meetings in good spirit, and it's always a shame, unfortunately, if people do not feel that they've been dealt with in a nice manner. So I have just want to say that that's been a really positive conversation. Thank you for your cooperation, Councillor Hosker. I'm going to move those minutes. Madam Deputy Mayor, will you second those minutes from the previous meeting?
second those minutes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. If there's no dissent, I will take those minutes as approved. Okay, the minutes are approved. Item 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest?
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Townsend. I'd like
Yeah.
to declare an interest in item number 5E on the agenda.
Thank you very much indeed.
Mr.
I
Mayor,
was waiting for you. Yeah.
likewise,
Okay, that's Councillor Townsend and Councillor Townley. They were tongue twisted, that wasn't it? Townsend and Townley. Okay, they are noted. Item 3 on the agenda, Mayor's communications. For numerous months, they've kept me very quiet, but tonight I can say a few words. My communications, please take note. I would like to announce that the following members have achieved a long service award in recognition of at least 8 years of service to the council. Councillors Bill Brindle, Saeed Chowdhury, Marcus Johnson, Tony Martin, Andrew Newhouse, and Leanne Pate. The long service award certificates will be sent to you members shortly. And can I please ask all of the members to say hear, hear to echo my words of acknowledgement?
Hear, hear.
You've all been heard. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank the following members who are retiring for their service to the council. Those are Councillors Bill Brindle, Councillor David Roper, and Councillor Andy Tactile. And just as I was going to say, any members to pay tribute, I have Councillor Townsend, I believe, first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say a few words, firstly about Councillor Brindle, who has shown great service and dedication to the ward. I've just noticed that he's receiving a certificate, a well-earned certificate for his 8 years service to this council. And certainly I think the council has an extra special thanks to Councillor Brindle, because I do know he was ready for retiring 12 months ago, but was happy to stay on through the COVID crisis, and certainly I'm very thankful to that. I'm sure the council is as well, in terms of the work that he's done throughout the 12 months. So I wish you all the best in your retirement, Councillor Brindle. Councillor Roper, not in our party, but I think we'd all agree on this council that we've certainly had some colourful interventions through the period that Councillor Roper has been on the council. And I've certainly personally had some interesting late night conversations with him also. So I'd also like to wish him all the best as well as he moves on, obviously, to do other things.
Thank you.
And finally, for Councillor Tactile, who has had the most distinguished service on this council, former mayor, former deputy leader, executive member, chair of scrutiny, and I'm sure has the respect of all members across this council in terms of the work that he's done for this borough over the years. He's certainly been wise counsel to myself during my period on the executive, both as leader and before that. And I'd certainly like to wish him well. I think everybody would agree he's done an absolutely fantastic job as chair of scrutiny, and I wish Councillor Tactile well into the future. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. We have Councillor Townley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In short, I'd just like to thank the colleagues that are leaving us. I mean, none of them are, of course, as everyone will know, are from our particular colour of politics. But I've very much enjoyed and learned a lot from each and every one of them. And I very much hope that in their future lives that our paths will cross. And especially with Councillor Tactile and Councillor Brindle, your words of wisdom at various times have been much appreciated. And indeed, we will all miss your wise counsel in this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Townley. And finally, we have Councillor Birtwistle.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just agree with what's been said there, but pay particular regard to Councillor Tactile. he's been on the council most of the time I've been on in fact, all of the time I've been on the council. And I have to say that Andy was one of the less political type councillors. He was always very friendly, always very helpful, and he paid a tremendous amount of time for the people who represented in Padiham. I mean, Padiham is a better place because of Andy Tactile, and I'm very sorry that he's finishing, but I know he's moved into the more expensive rounds of Simonstone to live, so he has to go. But I do thank Andy in particular for the friendship he gave to me and the good times we've had together. So that's me. Thank you. Thanks for that, Andy.
Thank you very much, Councillor Burtworth. So we have 2 more speakers left. We have, firstly, can I bring in Councillor Hosker?
Sorry about that, I lost my way a bit on thing. I'd just like to wish Bill Brindle all the best on his finishing at council. David Roper, the same. But Andy Tactile, me and Andy Tactile go back a long way. I mean, before I came council and before Andrew's been a council a lot of years. And what I would like to say to Andrew direct is I've always had a lot of respect for him. So much so, Andrew will tell you now, I could have put a council up one year against him when I was UKIP leader, and I refused to because he did such a good job. But Andrew Tactile knows that, and I know that. We've only had one disagreement ever. We put that behind us. But Andy, I have a great respect for him, and I'd just like to wish him all the best. Thank you.
Noted, Councillor Hosker. Can I finally bring in Councillor Fewings?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to echo the thanks for the 3 retiring councillors, but also to, in particular, thank Councillor Tactile for being one of those councillors who was able to get past party colours. When a new group came onto the council, it was a bit of a lonely place, and I think that Andy Tactile was an absolute gentleman and did the town proud in being very, very open, friendly, and also willing to work with others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. Just want to add a few words myself, members. Councillor Bill Brindle, I've always found Councillor Brindle a sea of calm, a very soothing character as he's entered politics, and I've always had a great amount of respect for him. And Councillor Roper, I've always enjoyed conversations with Councillor Roper. Again, very dynamic, very different, and brought a huge amount of diversity to the meetings and having some good contributions. And I really appreciate your contributions, Councillor Roper, and you can carry on with
Thank you.
Well deserved. And finally, I just want to add my personal huge admiration and thanks to Councillor Tactile. I do so because I know during my mayoral year and before my mayoral year, he's been a great mentor and a great source of inspiration and advice, and value, as others have said, the huge contribution you've made to the council and to members, and bringing and supporting new members in particular. I wish you all very well in your retirement, to you, your families. And then finally, I would like to thank the following members who are election candidates for their service to the council. Thank you very much for your service. New council re-election council candidates are Councillors Lubna Khan, Margaret Lishman, Liam Pate, Andrew Newhouse, Saeed Chowdhury, Mark Payne, Alan Hosker, Asif Raja, Arif Khan, Marcus Johnston, Peter McCann, and Tony Martin. That completes that item. Let's move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is public question time.
There are none, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda, items for decisions by the council. Can I point out to members that items for decision by council are treated as motions? Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members may then only speak again on an amendment. Will members please note that the minute extracts from the executive are within the agenda pack and the decisions for council are highlighted in bold. Item 5A, Food Safety Delivery Plan, Review 2021. Councillor Frasiab Anwar, will you please move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move this report, and in doing so, I'd just like to add that just to say thanks to all of the staff that work in the environmental health and licensing team for not only the work that goes on the day-to-day work that they've got to do, but also the additional work that they've taken on throughout this past year as a result of the pandemic and the fantastic job that they've done, but also at the same time maintained the very high standards that we expect as a result of the work that comes following this report. So I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mark Townsend. Will you second the report?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor, and I'll reserve the right to speak.
Okay, any member? I can't see anybody. Alison, can you, if that is the case? Is this okay? That's fine. I can't see anybody. So unless there's dissent, I would take that assent, sorry, and then no vote is required. So if there's no dissent, we can move forward as an assent. Okay, that's fine. The item is carried. So we'll move on to the next item, which is 5B, Health and Safety Intervention Plan, which was reviewed in 2020-2021. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you please move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I move the report, and similar to the previous item, just to thank the staff for the work that they've done, particularly over the past 12 months as part of the pandemic, and especially with the work that they've done with the supporting our efforts with regards to the testing sites and everything that's been set up. So I just like that to be noted. I move. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you second the report, please?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor, and again, I'll reserve the right to speak.
Any member?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, who is it? Sorry.
Councillor Oscar.
Yeah, Councillor Hosker, go ahead, please.
I'd just like to say to the council here, but his staff, they have been outstanding. I have to commend them on what they've done, and I agree with Councillor Honwar, and just condone, just saying to you, well done.
That's very kind of you. Thank you very much indeed. So are there no other members? So let's just move forward for a decision here. Unless there's dissent, I will take that as an assent, and no vote is required. Cool. No, that's really good. No dissent. So the item is carried. So we can now quickly move on to item 5C, which is extension of bulky waste collection price reduction. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you please move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to move this report, and again, just to say a few words, this was part of our pilot programme that project that we introduced, and it's coming to an end. And one of the things that we highlighted as part of that was the increase in usage, but also that it was hugely successful with the residents actually receiving it really well. So what we wanted to do was extend it for a further 6 months. But that will then give us the opportunity to actually analyse the data and look at it in more detail to see if it's having the desired impact on other areas as well, including things like fly tipping. So, but again, yeah, I'd just like to move the report. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you second the report, please?
Second the report, Mr. Mayor, and again, I'll reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Any member? Okay. Unless there's dissent, I will take that as assent and no vote is required. Okay, the item is carried. So we now move to item 5D, which is calendar of meetings 2021-2022. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you please move the report?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor, and in doing so, I hope members can see within the report that quite a number of the issues that they've raised over the last 12 months through both scrutiny and through member structures working group, in terms of some of the pressures that scrutiny has had and the alignment of timings with executive have been taken into consideration in this report. And in addition, there's an extra cycle proposed for January to take some of the workload, to split the workload of scrutiny rather than it being all in one meeting just prior to the budget. So I think quite a number of things that members have raised over the last 12 months have now been included in this report, and I hope that it's to the satisfaction of members. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move.
You're welcome. Thank you. Councillor Leanne Pate, will you second the report, please? Councillor Leanne.
I second that report, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? No member? Okay. Unless there's dissent, I will take that as assent and no vote is required. So, okay, no dissent. So the item is carried. We move over to item 5E, appointment of Mayor and Deputy Mayor 2021-22. Councillor Townsend and Townley have declared interest, so you will be temporarily removed from the meeting. Alison will sort that out.
Unfortunately, I no longer have host rights. Chris, could you move Councillors Townley and Townsend into
I
the
will
waiting
do.
room, please?
Yeah, just bear with me, Mr. Mayor.
Just give us a shout, Chris, when that's been confirmed, please.
Will do, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Mayor, they're both in the lobby.
Thank you very much. 5B, Councillor Liam-Pearce, will you move the report, please?
Move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gordon-Birtwistle, will you second the report, please?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? Okay, unless there's dissent, I will take that as assent and no vote is required. So, anybody? The item is carried. Can we bring them back in now, if you don't mind, Chris? Yeah.
I can confirm, Mr. Mayor, they're back in the meeting.
Thank you. Item 5F, appointments to independent remuneration panel. Councillor Mark Townsend, will you move the report, please?
I move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Liam-Pearce, will you second that report, please?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any member? Okay, no member there. So unless there's dissent, I will take that as assent and no vote is required. Any dissent? Okay, that's good. The item is carried. That's 5F completed. Moving on to item 6, reports from committee chairs. 6A, scrutiny. Councillor Andy Tactile, will you please move your report?
I remove my report, Mr. Mayor, and thank the people who did the best to embarrass me earlier in the meeting. But I must, before I go, I must thank the officers for the sterling work over the years. They knew they are. I've put it at the back end of my report. It's been a pleasure and it's been a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tactile. Any member? Okay, looking at the chat. The chat seems to be empty. That is no member. So we move on to 6B, audit and standards. Councillor Paul Campbell, will you move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my report.
Any member? Okay, I can't see anybody in the chat. Oh, okay. Sorry, what was that? Does anybody come in there? No, that doesn't sound like a conversation that someone's talking to. Okay, thank you. So we've got nobody for audit and standards. We move on to 6C, licensing. Councillor Arif Khan, will you move your report, please?
Move my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we have speakers indicated for licensing. Can you put yourself back on mute, sir? We have Councillor, Gordon Lishman for speaking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have just noted the report, which I assume other members will have seen, from Lancashire Police relating to their recent survey of taxis and their fitness. It appears that Burnley has achieved a 100% record, but a 100% record of failure is hardly something for congratulation. The implication of that 100% failure would appear to be that there are serious questions about the culture operating amongst taxi firms, and in particular that there are serious questions about the safety of taxi users and indeed drivers. And I wondered what ideas the committee and its chair had to address these important safety issues.
Thank you, Councillor Arif Khan. I've got another question from Councillor Anne Royal. Can you hold for 1 second? I'm going to bring Councillor Royal back in.
Can I say something
Okay.
to Gordon Dishman first? Yeah. First of all, we haven't met, as a committee since the last meeting, but I am aware of this situation, and I've been in touch with the officers, Joanne Swift as well. Yeah, so they are looking into it to actually solve this matter. It's a serious matter, no doubt about it. We want the public safety is paramount to us here. So I assure Councillor Lishman that we are on top of that work here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Khan. Can I bring Councillor Royal in, please?
The wrong arm, Mr. Mayor. It's Anne
Councillor Kelly.
Sorry, I do apologise. Wrong Anne. I'm just looking at my chat. So, Councillor, yes, Anne Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I'm probably going to reiterate pretty much what my big brother, Gordon Lishman, has said. I saw the report yesterday about the taxis, and to have a 100% failure rate in the safety of our taxis is absolutely unacceptable. I know it's been something that some of us who were on the licensing committee a while ago kept looking at, but we seem to have moved backwards at the moment rather than forwards. We have put the, stay safe promotion in place at the moment, and we've put screens and all that kind of thing. But actually, if the tyres and the brakes on the taxi don't work, that's equally important. And I think it's something that I know has been looked at before, but it is something that in the near future we have absolutely to get hold of.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. I've got Councillor Townsend and Anwar. Townsend first.
Yeah, just want to say something in terms of taxi safety. Obviously, let me just say that I share the concerns that have been raised, and was as shocked as anybody when I heard about the inspections where all 10 had failed. And let's make it absolutely clear, the COVID pandemic is no excuse for vehicles being unsafe. There can be no excuses for unsafe vehicles, and the licensing committee has the full support of this council, the executive, in taking whatever steps they need to get on top of this situation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Anwar, finally, before bringing Councillor Khan back in.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reiterate what colleagues have said, really, in terms of totally, as Councillor Lishman and Councillor Kelly have said, shocked to see that report in the paper. But at the same time, I think one thing that we can look at in a positive sense is the fact that with the reopening of businesses and shops, one of the things that the partnership working that's gone on between the council and the police to identify those vehicles, so those that aren't fit to be on the road have been taken off, and so that the officers are aware of that, and the police and the council working to address that issue. But what we want to do, as Councillor Khan said at the very beginning, is that public safety is paramount. So we will be looking into that.
Okay, thank you. Finally, I've got Councillor Hosker.
Mr. Mayor, I have to agree with other two colleagues. I'm getting a lot of reports of these, dangerous cars and unfit to be on the road. I'm also getting a lot of reports of no signs outside of the cars. And what I'd like to say to this council tonight is, as a former taxi driver myself, I run PSV now, I'm a PSV operator, but as a former taxi driver myself, I always find it better when we used to have as Lancashire County testing base. And when we had the Lancashire County testing base, as you know yourself, by being an ex-taxi driver yourself, Bernard were very strict, but you knew, but when you calculated there, you knew it was safe. And I just feel, but going back to different MOT place, I think our standards have gone downhill. And I think it should be coming back uphill, not going down. It's going further down. And it shows just on the failure rates itself, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Khan, you want just final word for you on any response?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo what Councillor Kelly, Councillor Townsend, Councillor Afrasiab, and Councillor Husker, they showed their concern. I'm totally with them, and we are looking into, our officers are exploring the way forward. They are working with the police, and hopefully by the next full council meeting, we'll come up with the strategy and the work plan to tackle this serious issue. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councillor Khan. That completes that section. Can we move on to item 6D, development control? Councillor Frank Kant, will you move your report, please?
Councillor Kant, you're muted.
Sorry about that.
Apologies
Thought
accepted,
I'd
Councillor.
unmuted, but
Don't do it
yeah,
again now.
as I say, in moving the report, I'm quite pleased that we seem to have an upturn in the amount of applications, planning applications that are coming forward, which is obviously a good sign for Burnley. The more applications we get, it means that people are developing, people are looking forward to the future. It's excellent news for our town. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Khan. Any member? Okay. Can't see anybody in chat, so...
Sorry,
Councillor Townley is waving.
Councillor Townley, okay, go ahead, Councillor Townley.
Sorry, I'm having a problem with a delay on sending messages. Yeah, I'm very glad to hear that from Councillor Kant, but I'd also like to say that there is a lot of illegal building and illegal development activity going on as well around the town. And I would like to suggest that more support and funding is put into our officers so they can get out and put a stop to this, because it is unfair on those who follow the policy, follow the guidelines, discuss all of this with our planning officers, to find that their adjacent or next door neighbours are simply going ahead and will be given retrospective planning as a matter of course, should or when and if they're ever found out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kant. There are no more members contributing. This is your response, please. And they'll be I'm finished there, please. Thank you, Councillor Kant.
Yeah, I agree entirely with Councillor Townley. I have noticed some myself that I thought, surely this hasn't come through planning. And yeah, it is. It's very frustrating. We need to increase our enforcement, and we need, well, we need more people to report things that they think might not have come through planning, because obviously after a length of time, it becomes established. And yeah, I agree entirely with you, Councillor Townley.
Thank you. We're going to move on, Councillor Townley, because you can only come in once. So we're going to leave it there. Thank you. We now move on to item 7, strategic plan. Thank you very much, by the way, Councillor Kant, for that. Thank you. So item 7, strategic plan progress reports. I will take each report in order. I will ask for any questions on the report, and the executive member will respond to one question at a time, or alternatively, they may take a few together. The same procedure will then be followed for observations. Can I remind members with a question or observation to clearly quote the page number and reference? Nothing is more confusing and frustrating than you just not mentioning the page number or reference. Also, will members please be concise? That's the word, magic word, concise, with their questions and observations. So, the leader, I believe, I'm going to ask Councillor Mark Townsend, would you please move your report? And as the question is, I believe there are some people that want to come in already. So questions, I have first, if I'm right, Councillor Gordon Lishman.
Mr. Mayor, can I move through my report first?
Yeah, you can move your report first. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Go ahead, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just before I do move my report, I just want to say that obviously I wasn't around for when you made the decision tonight on item 5E, but I'm assuming that the recommendation was approved.
Yes.
In light of if that was approved, I wish to make my own position clear going forward, in that I will obviously be, in light of that, resigning as leader of the council at the appropriate time in order to take up the position of mayor, as per the statutory requirements required under law. And as this will be my final council as leader, I'd just like to thank everyone for their support over the previous years that I've been leader of the council. It's always been predominantly in good spirit. I know we've had differences of opinion. It's been difficult at times and challenging, but certainly I think that as a council we have moved forward, and I'd just like to thank everybody for their support. And having said that, Mr. Mayor, I will move my final report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Townsend. Maybe I should have took a moment to say congratulations to yourself for being nominated as the mayor for next year, and also for Councillor Townley for being approved and seconded and nominated for deputy mayor for the next year. And on that very positive note, I will now move to questions now to move over to Councillor Gordon Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just add my congratulations to Mark that have already been mentioned, and indeed to Cosy. It is interesting that we have both a current mayor and a former mayor who you could describe as being kicked upstairs into more formal and dignified surroundings, albeit in different ways. And we will look forward to the new and wholly dignified mayor over the next year. I wanted to ask a question, which I think the leader is quite likely to agree with, but I think it's an important point to put on the record. There is a reference in PR1 on page 94 to something called Lancashire's economy. Now, in fact, there isn't a Lancashire economy. There are a series of different economies. There is a coastal towns economy, there is a rural and farmland economy. There are also, in the areas nearer to the two big conurbations in the northwest, effectively economies which are dependent on either Merseyside or Greater Manchester. The problem about talking too much about Lancashire's economy is the suggestion that really we're dealing with economic circumstances which are similar across the whole of the county. I guess that the leader of the council will agree with this comment, and that indeed he would agree with my request, which is that he should be emphasising in these discussions, and indeed I hope he will be recommending his successor as leader to emphasise the importance of Burnley's economy, although it has some things in common with other parts of East Lancashire, in particular with Preston and its surrounding area. It also, in the extent to which it has relied traditionally on its engineering base, been considerably in advance of some of those other areas. And I think it's important also to be looking at the regional economy, because good as our relationship with UCLAN is, it is in fact the major research universities in the two conurbations which are going to be leading the possibility of a technological and other innovation. And it's important, therefore, that we are part of that wider regional economy in looking at the opportunities for our town, rather than risk being frozen out by metro mayors and such.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. There's about 100 questions there, but a lot of points to consider, but very thoughtful contribution. Can I ask Councillor Townsend if I can bring in the other two questions before you answer this? Is that okay, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor, another Lishman we've got, Councillor Maggie Lishman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's PE1A, page 95. I notice at the bottom of the page a reference to holiday activities and food programmes and officers working with colleagues from County Council on the plans. My question is quite simply that I hope this is going to involve the schools locally rather than simply just the County Council officers, unless you're counting teachers as County Council workers, because it's important, I think, certainly speaking as a governor of one of the secondary schools, the schools know better than most people do now where the problems are and where help is needed. And that is particularly true since COVID has hit the area, and they've been responsible for keeping things like the food meals going when the county council was still dithering over whether to allow them or not. They've had to make those decisions. So I think it's really important that the schools are engaged with rather than simply at the county council level. And my question is that please can you make this happen?
Okay, I think that Councillor Townley's revoked her question, so that is it now for questions. No more questions, Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I think Councillor Lishman said that I would probably agree with his question, and I do agree with his question, that basically Lancashire is made up of many sub-economies, and to wrap it all up into one can certainly sometimes lose its focus. What I would say is that we are all as leaders are making sure that our own particular and respective economies are covered within the Lancashire plan that is being developed. We need to ensure that that is the case, and we have to do that really, and it may not be palatable for all or understood by all, certainly here in Lancashire, but when it gets to Whitehall and when it gets to government, it has to be sellable. So we do have to make sure that it includes everything, but you do have to boil it down a little bit to make it sellable at Whitehall and government level, especially when you're fighting for funds alongside the Metro mayors. So point well made, and certainly I do agree with him, and I will be, if the new council leader ever seeks my advice, I will be saying the same as well, that that's certainly something that we need to fight for. And coming to Councillor Margaret Lishman's points about the holiday activities and food programme, again, couldn't agree more really. And it's not just schools as well. There are other stakeholders who need to be consulted in this process to make sure that we give the best support that we possibly can to children through the holidays. I think if COVID has taught us one thing, that we need to be more collaborative a lot more in the future in how we deal, not just with holiday hunger and holiday activities, but many other things in our society. And certainly need to learn those lessons and implement what those lessons teach us. So certainly in my remaining time, I will be fighting to ensure that all stakeholders are considered, including the schools, as you say. Thank you.
Thank you. You've got two observations from Councillor Pate and Birtwistle. Councillor Pate first.
Thank you. It's on page 94, PE1A, just to say how much I welcome the reintroduction of the ESOL services into the council's remit. Obviously, many moons back, I was part of that service at the council, and I've taught many of those classes and seen hundreds of people go through them, and I can't tell you how much of an enabler they are for people, but also how difficult the funding is to get for some of those classes, and this is warmly welcomed by everybody in the borough, I would imagine. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Councillor Birtwistle, your observation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's on page 95, related to primary and secondary engineers. Could I welcome this and congratulate the people running this? I think this is a great programme. I think it's important. Can you hear me? Yes, go on. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'm unmuted.
I think Mr. Mayor may have frozen for a second there.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back here now. Councillor Birtwistle, continue. Apologise for the technical problem.
No problem. I was just welcoming the primary and secondary care engineers programme, as I believe this is a great thing for the future of our town. I mean, when I left school, which is a hell of a long while ago, most boys went to be engineers or joiners, something in that line. We didn't know what engineers were. It just happened to be a job down the road where a company made something and you became an apprentice engineer. And it served me well all my life. Nowadays, young people are shown what engineering is, long before they need to go into engineering, because there are so many industries and so many professions available now that weren't available in the past. Engineering has to fight hard to get the cream of the crop to go in there, and teaching young people at a young age what engineering is about. It's not like what is it on Coronation Street where they're repairing cars. They're not engineers. They're engineers who make things, airplane parts and things of that. And I do believe this is the way to bring young people on to want to be engineers, not forced into being engineers because there wasn't anything else. And I really, really welcome this, and I think it's been a great success for this term. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. That completes the observations. Councillor Townsend, you can respond there, please.
Yeah, very quickly, I welcome Councillor Pate's comments. I think she's absolutely right that it's welcomed by very many people across this borough in terms of how this is now managed. To be honest, I wish I could have spent more time in my short time that I've been back as leader over the last few months to actually look into this further. And unfortunately, time with COVID and everything else hasn't allowed me to do so. But it's certainly something that I want to keep an eye on in the future. And to Councillor Birtwhistle's comments on primary and secondary engineers, again, I couldn't agree more. I must admit, in my time as leader, some of the most enjoyable times are when the primary and secondary engineer awards have been, and presenting some of the prizes to the children who were doing the cars and things like that that they'd made, who could go the furthest distance. So it wasn't just about practicing and things like that. There was an element of competition as well about it, which really brought it to the fore, and the children really, really enjoyed themselves. And if you're enjoying yourselves, there's no better way of learning. And I was proud as well as leader of the council that we were ones who actually put money into primary and secondary engineer to keep it going in Burnley as a pilot before it was even rolled out wider across the country. So something that we should be extremely proud of. And I know that Mr. Mark Crabtree has we have a lot to be thankful to him for getting that programme up running and started and it becoming the success that it has. And I'm sure there'll be lots of automotive and aerospace engineers of the future who this is where they started. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Townsend. I'm going to go to the Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing. I'll take this report and then go for a 5-minute break after this question and observation session. Councillor Leanne Pate, will you move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move my report. Just in doing so, I'd like to say great thanks to the staff and the volunteers that have been making the testing and vaccinating process so smooth. Particularly the testing has grown legs in the last few weeks. The lateral flow tests have gone from having the three sessions a week in different community venues, many of which have been run by volunteers, some of them sitting here tonight. But also it's got to become a way of life, and it really has been rolled out quite heavily by council officers who have done mass testing at the colleges, mass testing at large employers, and really credit to them, because obviously this was something they were never trained to do, and they've really had to, learn as they went along. And I would also like to pay thanks to everybody that's been volunteering at Burnley Together. I know we do this every meeting, but I think it's worth doing every meeting. So thanks to them all. Move my report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Margaret Lishman, is that your question you've got there? Yep, question.
Comment.
Is that sorry, observation? Sorry, is that observation?
Observation, yes.
Okay, so we'll come back to council. We'll come back to you later, Councillor Lishman. Councillor Shaw, saying you've got a question. Question, Councillor Shaw? Or was that a comment, Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm sorry, I don't have the paperwork with me, Mr. Mayor, so I can't really refer to a page number or and a section. So sincerely apologise. But I have sent an email to Councillor Leanne Pate with regards to the issue, and Leanne just told me, so she's aware of it. And my question is, over the recent months, there's been 6G polls and posts around Burnley. I'm not sure if people have seen. Most councillors would have seen it. I'm not sure if councillors have had any comments with regards to it. But in my ward, and there is a pole and a box that is very near to the playground on Burley Street, and some of the residents have raised concerns. Two concerns. One, you know, was there any permission given to have it near the playground? And secondly, about concerns about health issues. People have read up on 6G interference and such, and have concerns about radiation and such. So my question to the exec member is, are there any issues around health that we should be aware of? And fitting a box next to the playground and the pole and the mast, 6G mast, is that an appropriate place to have? And if not, can we have it replaced elsewhere? Thank you.
Okay. Just hold on, Councillor Pate. Councillor Townley, is your other question as well, Councillor Townley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's page 97, item PE4. I've been approached by several of the bowling community with concerns that one or two of their former pitches are not going to be used for bowls. I'm just wondering whether she can confirm that and on what grounds they're being withdrawn.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Town. That completes the questions, Councillor Pate. You can come back.
Thank
please.
you. So I'll just start with Councillor Shah. I absolutely agree with him. I think it's absolutely ludicrous that we've got polls going up with the public just can't get over the fact that these polls can be put up. Some of them are as high as 30 feet, and the members that they vote for, that they put in place to represent them, literally do not have a say in this. This does not come through local planning. This does not come through LCC's planning. This is a government go ahead. Essentially, for anybody that hasn't seen them, there will be a 30-foot mast erected, and that will be the siting of the 6G. And following that, I think it's, if you're in terraced houses, maybe about every 10 houses there is a repeater telegraph pole put up. The company just arrives, shoves that up, and away they go. And people are absolutely outraged by it. I have to say that I'm opposed to them putting anything near any playgrounds. They have come along and cited what is the 30-foot pole. It's the actual pole itself, and 2 cabinets as well outside that playground. I think it's a new technology. We don't know what could be coming out of that. I know I'm not reassured that there's no risk to health from that. I have asked officers urgently to look at this. There will be somebody from planning will be looking into it, and somebody from parks, along with somebody from environmental health. And I think it's very important that we move quickly if there's to be an appeal, so that we can, get on top of that and get that removed. It's the main mast that Councillor Hussain is talking about. So it is very, very important that this is done early doors. But it is literally 2 foot from the park, and I share his absolute, it's sort of exaggeration of it. It's awful that this has gone up. So and I also am not clear that anybody is getting any notice about the other ones that are going up. They're being put up in other areas as well, and it's causing upset to a number of people who particularly are living in areas with a covenant. I think that affects quite heavily on the Lanehead area, where members of the public are coming forward and saying we've got covenants on our houses that don't allow us to build, yet these people can come along and stick a post up outside our door. It's just quite distressing for them. I will do everything I can to object to that, and I'm sure that Councillor Shah saying will join me in that. Thank you. I want just to go on to Councillor Townley. I'm not aware of which greens they are. Can we have a conversation and make sure that you're fed back to? Obviously, as a bowling person myself, I'm very keen to make sure that these things are kept open for future generations. Bowling's been in my family many years. My granddad's bowling partner was the former Councillor Margaret Tomlinson. That was his bowling partner. So we go back a long way, me and bowls, and I totally agree that these need to be kept open for the future where possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that history as well. I've got quite a few observations. I'll start with Councillor Lishman first. Margaret Lishman.
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of observations. The first one on PL4. page 98, and I'd like Councillor Paint to pass on my thanks to the bereavement services. I had the probably misfortune is better than saying fortune to go to a service at the crematorium remotely shortly after Christmas, and thereby discovered that the sound system was appalling for anybody listening remotely. I made that comment through to the officers, and I'm delighted to say that that was addressed fairly quickly, because I think in these particular times when not many people can actually go to funerals and a lot more people are doing remote attendance, it's extremely important that we have a system that allows them to do that adequately and to listen to what's going on. I think I probably was more likely to complain than perhaps a lot of other people that did go remote. Note out to all councillors to make them aware of our position as councillors and as a council, our inability to do anything about this, because this is happening right across the board, and I think all of us are receiving a lot of phone calls and notes about this particular issue. I do know that if you do approach the people doing the polls and ask them very nicely, they are willing to make some adjustments to the positions, but that's only if they're feeling able to do that. It obviously isn't anything that they are legally required to do. I think again, Councillor Pate, we do need a notice to go to all members so that members are clear on the council's position and our inability to tackle this particular issue, which has been imposed by central government and nobody else. And I think it's important that we're clear what we say to people. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Quite a few more observations, Councillor Pate. Councillor Townley is very skillful. She's going to turn a question into an observation. Councillor Townley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is to do actually with the parks on page 98. I think we are still required to give the paragraph and page, aren't we, on observations, PL4. And that's to say, I hope that Councillor Pate and all councillors will join with me to condemn those who would enjoy our parks and yet leave them in such a state that our rangers are left with days worth of work to clear up the mess that has been taken into the park to eat, and not, I mean, if someone can take their picnic into the park to eat it, why can't they take the remains of it out of the park and dispose of it as they should? And I hope that this will be put out as a message from the council that we don't expect our rangers to be litter pickers and to be guardians, having to guard each of our playing fields against rubbish that should be rightly taken home, and which those who are leaving it know should be properly disposed of. As far as the polls are concerned, the 6G and 5G, I've come across this in the Dales as well. It is a fact, I'm afraid, that people like technology. They like using it. They like having the most up-to-date devices. I dislike these polls too, and I will absolutely support anything that gives us some say in where they are placed. But let us not forget that these are useful for our emergency services and for everybody's use. So we need to be slightly, we need to acknowledge the fact that this is technology moving on, and we need to work with them rather than working against them as Luddites. And that's coming from someone who can scarcely use her phone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Commis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to, thank you, Councillor Townley, for clearing up that these are 5G poles. 6G doesn't exist. Now, as regards the 5G poles, obviously there are legitimate reasons why you might object to them being in a particular place. These reasons, I would say, are aesthetic more than anything else. And I think it would be a very poor idea if the council were to indulge any sort of Facebook or social media conspiracy theories about possible dangers which simply don't exist. 5G is just essentially a repurposing of a particular section of the wavelength. which already exists. We're already all being subjected to it already, pretty much all the time. There's no legitimate health concerns related to 5G.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anne Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just back to these polls, I got the same message about the planning permission wasn't needed. Suddenly, out of the blue last week, we got a planning application for 2 poles. No idea why those 2 out of the 25 they're putting up in our ward, but we've got a planning application coming for 2, which aren't next to each other. They're on different roads, different streets, but they've had to put an application in. So I wondered if anybody else has got any, or why we might get them for these particular 2.
You're observing the shock of having a planning permission.
I am. I'm observing the shock of having it. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. We've got last few 2 observations. I'm not taking any more after this. So last 2 is Councillor Hosker and Councillor Newhouse. Councillor Hosker first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Observation on bowling games first, but one in Padiham on Park Road in Padiham. With antisocial.
Can you give us a page number?
Oh, sorry. PL 498.
Okay.
The observation is on that. We, as you know, as Councillor Tactile know, we're just having new fencing put up in there. Antisocial behaviour. We've got kids running off at Bowling Green. Our council officers keep having to go down and repair it, and when officers could be doing other jobs. My observation is would it not be a nice idea to have it locked up at night times? Parks. If we have to lock the park, it's just an observation. Observation it being seen locked up. If you can understand that, Mr. Bell, you were going to give me a question, weren't you? But I'm observing the fact if I can see them locked up.
Okay.
The other observation is regarding these polls. I have to agree, and it's not often I agree with Councillor Cates, but I have to agree. I wouldn't like one outside my house, and I don't think Gordon Burtwell do have one outside his, and I don't think Councillor Townley or Townsend will like them outside theirs. So I can understand everybody's point of view. And again, we are elected members. We're getting this no say on this whatsoever, and I honestly think it's shocking.
Okay. Observation is noted, Councillor Hosker. And last speaker on this, Councillor Andrew Newhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's page 97, PL4, again about the towers. I think that's the one that we're talking about.
Fine, yeah.
Again, it isn't 6G, it doesn't exist. It's 5G, and it's supposed to be an extension for the areas that aren't able to get the super fast broadband. So me, particularly in a rural area, I'm getting a 30 meg connection. This could give you the 100 meg connection, but they're sticking it up in the town centre where they can already get this sort of technology. If they went to a different provider, the optic fibre from what we use, the Virgin network, will do that, but they're not able to get that with the BT in certain areas, in more rural towns like Burnley. It would be perfect in possibly more rural areas like Worston, and my particular connection would be able to get a faster speed. But in the town centre, we really need to look at these poles and the actual cabinets and where these locations are. We don't necessarily need them for the technology involved. This technology is quicker and fast for them to put up because obviously they're not needing the planning applications, and it may over a short period of time get that technology up to a faster rate to make that percentage. But do we really need to do that in our town centres, in all areas, when the technology is already there? This is probably technology for areas where that is not available, and I think the areas where they're putting them up at the moment, and I've seen the reports and where they're going, I think there's one in Bruncher as well, that it's just not really needed in those areas, and I think we need to have more control and look over that. So I will echo the other councillors that have said that there. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Councillor Pate, can you respond to them observations in a succinct manner?
Thank you. I'll take the polls as one, if you see what I mean. I'll reply to the others first. So yeah, to Councillor Margaret Lishman, the bereavement service has really stepped up to the plate, and it's obviously quite a tough ask as well, because you're dealing with people at a very sensitive time. But some of the changes that have been made over the last year will be lasting changes, and have much improved now, particularly the sound system. Councillor Townley, I don't know whether Councillor Townley saw what I'd said on my Facebook page at the time when somebody put on the council website, please can you take your rubbish home? It was very much just like what Councillor Townley said there. You brought it, take it home with you. For goodness sake, if you can carry it there, you can carry it home empty. I just do not understand the mentality of people throwing rubbish everywhere. There's been a group of people just down the road from me today in a lovely little bit of woodland, a full hour, 13 bin bags they took out of there. And every time we go in with the dog, it's the same. We need to treat our public spaces better. We can't have people throwing rubbish around like this, and it's always the same stuff, cans and cups from takeaways. There are bins around, and if you can't, you took it there, take it home. And not just to think about park rangers, but most of our parks are actually kept clean by volunteers. They must be absolutely heartbroken when they go into Townley Park after a lovely sunny day and it looks like Glastonbury's been happening in there. It's just very, very sad, and I really urge people to have a bit of respect for those volunteers that give their time. I think that you think we've covered anything that isn't polls, but just back to the polls, just to clear anybody that's listening to this, what the 6G and the 5G thing is, the boxes are marked up as 6G. So it's just to clarify where this 6G word is coming from. It's Inginexus. I never get it right. The company that's installing them. It's fibre, ultra fast fibre broadband. The difference being is that this is going over the ground, whereas people like me would prefer it to be under the ground. There is one due to be put outside my front door, so maybe I do have a bit of an interest in this. I'm less bothered about that than I am about boxes being put outside of parks. But when people smoked 100 years ago, they didn't know what side effects came off it, and I am until I see something that assures me. I haven't seen anything yet, haven't been given anything. I just keep getting told that there's no side effects of any of these boxes or anything. I just think we ought to hold caution. And just to follow up on the bit from Councillor Newhouse, he's absolutely right. They are all going in town centres. I have seen the plans of where they're going. But in the town centre, we do have a bit of a broadband problem. Obviously, I do something around broadband for my day job, and our connection is poor. Our telephone system is poor, and that's down to the connectivity in the town centre. But he's right, more should be done to support those people in the rural areas, particularly those who run rural businesses that are now more and more moving away from having to buy their produce to run their businesses at markets, and now having to move online, and they're having to hang things out of a window with a dongle on it just to get a connection. Those are the people that really need it most and would find it most impactful on their lives. Thank you for them all, though, the observations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pate, for your succinctness and getting across all the observations. Now we'll take a 5-minute break, and it's not a 5-minute going on to 15, it'll be 5
Mayor?
inside.
Mr. Mayor,
Sorry.
just a
Yes.
question. When I asked Councillor Pate about the ball and greens, I didn't seem to get an answer.
Sorry, Councillor Hosker. Yeah, I will. I'm not sure about whether or not the ability to lock that green is possible, but I can find out that for you and come back to you if that's okay.
Okay.
The only concern, Councillor Pate, is with antisocial behaviour in that area, as you can appreciate. You've got officers who work hard for you.
Yeah,
And then
can
kids
we
are
not
running
have the
across it.
conversation now, Councillor Hosker?
Bowling, I'm only saying, Mr. Mayor, but the bowling green's nice and smooth. We want to try and keep it that way for pensioners.
Noted. That's your observations noted.
And people of all ages.
Okay, is that your response, Councillor Pate?
Yeah, I will come back to Councillor Hosker when I find out something about it. Okay.
Thank you. Now I'm going to call a 5-minute break. And
Mr. Chairman,
sorry,
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Chowdhury.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I beg to leave because of the fasting.
No, just 1 second, Councillor Chowdhury, just bear with me. I'm calling a 5-minute break because we've got through significant progress as per health and safety guidelines. So we take a 5-minute break and we'll resume in 5 minutes. Okay, so it'll be 5 minutes. Can you please switch off the broadcast, please, MJ?
welcome back to this evening's full council meeting. Mr Mayor, over to you.
We now move on to the Executive Member for Resources and Performance. Councillor Sue Graham, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do move my report.
Are there any questions for Councillor Graham? I'm looking at the screen. Okay. Nobody indicating on screen. Okay, that's fine then. Are there any observations for? Oh, 1 second, Councillor Townley, is that a question or observation?
It can be both, Mr. Mayor.
I'll give you a question. Have the question.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, we still have an outstanding amount of £20,500 for public water fountains, which obviously in the age of COVID are no longer really something that we would be proposing. Are you going to put this money towards the climate emergency or other funds?
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Townley. Yeah, the money is from the climate change working group's budget, so to speak. We've already allocated some of that, as the report says, to tree planting schemes and the purchase of electric mowers. The decision will be made on that next week by the executive. If there is money available following that in the coming months, then we shall consider other really good projects for that money. I think you're probably right that about the fountains not being COVID compliant at the moment, and I don't think that we'll be doing anything about them until we've got through this pandemic and out the other side. So Councillor Fewings may have comment on that, but at the moment we're not likely to be spending it on the water fountains. Thank you.
Okay, can I just, before I bring observations, can I just bring in Councillor Fewings' comments? And he's just saying, point of information, he said it isn't from the climate change budget. Clarification there. Simon Goff told him, Councillor Fewings, the fountains that are COVID compliant have been ordered, and we wish him well because he's not well at the moment. So, are there any other observations? Councillor Townley, have you got an observation, Councillor Townley? Or is that just?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I was actually going to take Councillor Graham up on that point. It is actually a separate budget. I find it quite strange that we should be putting these projects, which are only going to be, well, they're going to have to go into the revenue budget at the end of the day, because antisocial behaviour, the constant need to watch over the COVID compliance, or even any form of infection compliance of such things, is going to be an enormous cost, an ongoing cost to the council. That's an observation.
Thank you very much. You want to quickly come back on that very quickly, Councillor Graham? Or?
Yeah, I think if there's dissent on the issue, I think we probably need to investigate a little bit further and come back with any suggestions after that. So it's with the officers and with ourselves to discuss that further. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Graham. I'm going to move on to the Executive Member for Housing, which is Councillor John Harbour. Will you please move your report, Councillor John Harbour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move my report.
Any questions to Councillor John Harbour? Anybody in chat?
Councillor Hosker.
Councillor Hosker, I'll go first you, then Councillor Lishman. Councillor Hosker, go ahead for your question.
Yeah, I just want to ask Councillor Harbour.
Page number?
Oh, sorry, which one is it now? Just bear with me 1 minute. PL2103, I think it is.
Okay, I'll take that. Go ahead. Is
that correct number? I've got that many written down here. I don't know which one's which.
I'll take that for the smooth progressing of the meeting.
Prestwich Street in Burnley, Councillor Harbour. Is that one of your? Is that under restricted licensing? Can I ask?
Is that your question?
The question is, it's under an estate agent, and I just want to know. I've spoken to officers this week, and nothing seems to be getting done. I just want to know if Councillor Harbour could enlighten me on what will be done on the restricted licence. And when you get when you get a premises, what's in need of repair, and you go into estate agent, what rented out, and the people in it are suffering consequences.
Okay, that's your question. Just quickly now, can I bring Councillor Lishman? That's the only other question I've got, Councillor Lishman, and then Councillor Harbour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. PL3 on 104, the section about new homes. I've been thinking about this and the conversations that we've had in the Development Control Committee, and it seems to me that all the conversations about how people on new estates are going to come together in communities and how they're going to access services for their new estates take place at the time when we're giving planning permission. I don't know, perhaps I'm wrong, but I don't see anything which says once people have actually moved there, and there are often people coming from some distance from all over the borough and perhaps outside it, very different backgrounds and so on. Once they actually all come together, does anybody have any conversations with them in a new estate as a group about how they develop that new estate into a community so that they develop mutual into
Can you please put yourself on mute, Councillor Burtwhistle, please? Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Lishman, finish your question.
It's all right. It gets a bit much when you have two Gordons at the same time. I think we know that when new estates are built, either you can take action which help them to come together as cohesive communities with access to services, or you can leave them to their own devices, in which case communities might or might not develop. Can I ask Councillor Harbour if he would consider looking at the question of how we turn an estate of new houses into a community of interdependent people and what sort of investment and support we need to provide? We're now talking, looking at his report, at really some thousands of new homes and people in our borough, and I think we should be thinking about the services and support we provide them with.
Thank you. That's two questions for you, Councillor Harbour. The floor is yours, Councillor Harbour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Regarding Councillor Oscar's query, I'm not just sure whether, I think he said Prestwich Street is, whether it's in a selective area or not. If you could actually form the details to me with the actual query he's making, I'll ask officers to look into it. Councillor Lishman's question, I've got to say, I think that's one of the most interesting questions I've been asked for many, many years. I think he would agree with me, and I think all colleagues will agree with me, that I don't think we've ever, or as a council, interfered or took any action on once a development is up and running. Some people might argue that it's not the council's responsibility to start going in there and telling them how to run their lives or how to build a community, or it's just a natural way of people find their own way. So at this moment in time, I think what he's actually saying is, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, it would take some resources to do that as well. So I can ask officers to look at it, but I just say to my colleague with great respect, perhaps be careful what we're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Harbour. And any observations? Let's have a quick look. No, seems to be no observations. If that is the case, we will now move on to the next report. Thank you very much, Councillor Harbour. The next report is Executive Member for Community and Environment, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar. Can you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move my report. Thank you.
Any questions for Councillor Afrasiab Anwar?
Councillor Oscar.
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Oscar, by the way.
I have to come across this way because for some reason I can't work this computer thing. It's just a straightforward question for me and Councillor Anwar. I just want to know if he's sorted the question it asked me about the boy bins. That's all I want to ask him.
Thank you. Any other questions besides Councillor Hoskers? Anybody else? That's it. Going. Oh, Andrew Fewings. Okay, talking about something else, which is selective licensing under Trinity scheme. Okay, that's it. No more questions. That's just the one question for you tonight, Councillor Anwar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as I've explained to Councillor Hosker in person and officers have as well in writing is that there is a review going on in terms of the bins, the phase 2 rollout that he's talking about. As soon as we have dates for that, and once we get out of this period, as soon as we have dates for that, I will let him know, and he can then share that with the residents that he's been working with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Afrasiab Anwar. Any observations, please? Anybody? Any observations? Okay, that's no observations. I shall now move progress. Last report of the strategic reports, Executive Member for Economy and Growth, Councillor Asif Raja. Will you please move your report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I move my report.
Okay. Any questions for Councillor Raja? No? Okay. Any observations for Councillor Raja? Gordon Lishman, Councillor Lishman, can you please come up through with your observation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 2 comments. Firstly, on PR6 on page 112 about High Street, I was very pleased to see the reference to neighbourhood shopping areas, and I would observe that it would be a good idea to think about not just the phased reopening, but how these areas are going to develop. As the town centre of Burnley develops for the future, there may well be changes in the nature and role of neighbourhood shopping centres, whether in Padiham or in Holsyke or in other areas. And I would observe that it seems to me to be a good idea to be thinking more openly about the way in which those areas develop. A second query, which is on also on PR6, bottom of page 113, about economic recovery and grants. You may get a little surprised that I keep having to make the same point, but on this, has there been any serious consideration given to providing loans or investment as other ways of providing support than simply giving people grants?
Okay, that's a question, but I'll let you have that one because that's the last one there. Councillor Kelly. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on page 110 about Burnley Market.
Yep.
I don't know if other people have seen it, but we've got the wonderful Raina Pepper, who seems to be promoting the market. And every week she does a 5-minute or a 10-minute blog video which is shared. I think it needs sharing a lot more, because she's absolutely brilliant, and if anybody can get people into the market, it will be Raina. But I would just like to see her videos being shared a lot more so that people are much more aware, because it does seem to be making a difference.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you,
observation.
Mayor.
Thank you. You're welcome, Councillor Kelly. That observation is noted. And Councillor Asif Raja, can you please respond to the observations, please, Councillor Raja?
Yeah, I can do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just going on Councillor Lishman in regards to neighbourhood shopping areas. This obviously came into our attention a while back, and with the officers, we have been obviously discussing this on a regular basis. And this is what exactly, you know, as you suggested, we want to improve these areas also, as well as the town centre. So it is on our agenda, and like I said, I mean, it's down to obviously the funding that we can get, the money that we have, and in the near future, these areas will definitely be looked at and developed as well at the same time. The other observation I made, well, the question in terms of recovery grants. I mean, we rely a lot on government grants. You know what we get, or what we get allocated to ourselves as a borough. We have obviously over the past year, I think, you know, our teams have done a phenomenal job in regards to distributing grants to local businesses. And again, you know, we always are fighting for more and more funding to come into our town. And absolutely, we will consider, you know, grants for larger businesses, especially if it's going to safeguard jobs and create new jobs in our borough. And finally, in regards to Councillor Kelly's observation in regards to the vlogs that you mentioned, I personally haven't seen the vlogs regarding the Burnley markets. However, if you can point me to the right direction as to where I can find these, I would personally share these on my Facebook pages, and I'm sure my colleagues on here would also do that as well. Once we start sharing, the word will get out. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for that response to the observations. We now move on to item number 8, questions.
None have been received, Mr. Mayor.
Well, that concludes my last meeting where there's official council business. What a blast of a year it's been. I just want to say thank you everyone for watching and tuning in. Please do give us feedback, those that are watching, and let us know how this service is for you people. And just want to say a huge, massive thank you to all the members for being so cooperative and working with us all the way. And I just want to say this, we never say this enough. I want to say the logistics of making sure these meetings, full council meetings, I still can't believe we finished so early tonight. I was waiting for 10:30 finish, but I'll stay quiet. I want to thank Mick Cartledge, Lukman Patel, Kath Wardby, Alison McEwen, Chris Gay, Imelda Grady, Eric Dickinson, MJ, and anyone else I've missed out. You are formidable officers, and you guys hold the fort behind. And everyone, thank you very much. I apologise if I've said anything to hurt or offend anybody. I'm a man of faith, but I always believe in reflection. And I'm trying my best, and I hope you all keep working hard. And some of you might want to nip out to the outdoor pub. Some of you might want to get a quick haircut, but if not, stay safe. Let's keep following the rules. It's been a difficult few days for us as a country, as a borough. Thank you, everybody, for all your cooperation, and may God bless you all and your families. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.